You're listening to Secrets of a Bridal Seamstress podcast. I'm your host, Nadine Bozeman. In this podcast, I'm sharing business systems and strategies specifically tailored to the bridal sewing industry so you can build your own modern and profitable bridal alterations business. Join me as I also get to chat with fellow seamstresses and share their personal success stories. I'm so glad you're here and that we can grow together in this unique trade. All right, welcome back to another episode of Secrets of a Bridal Seamstress. I am so excited to share our guest with you today. And I think more importantly, the topic that we're going to cover is so great for our listeners. So I am here with Megan Gillikin, and she is a wedding pro. She's a wedding pro educator. She's a speaker. So how about you tell us about how you got into the wedding industry? I always tell the joke that The Wedding Planner, the movie, I feel like that's what got
just like J-Lo. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So I was a middle school teacher before becoming a bridal seamstress, but I feel like J-Lo was always pulling me into the wedding world. So how did you get here?
Funny. Yeah, so I found my way into the wedding industry via hospitality. I'm one of those rare people that my college degree is hospitality management. I thought I wanted to be a pastry chef. Then I thought I wanted to, do all things hotels. So I actually got my start working for Marriott in the corporate world, working my way through different positions. I worked at the front desk. I worked in catering sales. I worked as a banquet operations manager. And long story short, I went on a job interview back a long time ago, 14 years ago, with a local wedding and event planner where I thought I was going to be interviewing to join her team. And I actually came out with option to purchase her business. She sat down next to me in a Starbucks and was like, I'm burned out. I'm looking for someone to take over my business. I have 4 weddings, in the next few months that I'm really just hoping to find someone to take over. At the time, I'd been married to my husband for maybe 3 weeks, truly. And I went home to him and I was like, what a bummer. I thought it was an option to join her company, but she wants me to purchase it. And that's not something that I'm ready to do right now. That's not where I'm at. And my husband was like, yes, let's do it. We'll take out a small business loan. This is what you're meant to do. And flash forward, I had that business for 12 years. I built it from I built it from something that really needed some love and rebrand and a repair into something that I ended up selling in 2022, full circle moment, to be able to sell the business that I bought to one of the ladies on my team. And while I was preparing that business to sell, I had started doing education and coaching for wedding pros. I started a podcast called Weddings for Real back in 2018, back when I didn't think people listened to podcasts and I just thought it would be fun. And now I do full-time education for the wedding industry.
Wow, what a story. And okay, also shout out to your husband for believing yeah, do it. What are we waiting for? That's awesome.
He's been, that cheerleader where you need someone that believes in you when you don't yet believe in yourself. He's constantly been that person for me.
Yeah. Wow. That's a super inspiring story. So were there any initial moments working with couples or that just made you feel like, okay, I love being in this wedding world, especially coming from hospitality and making that shift, those first experiences?
What's interesting is when you make the joke about J-Lo, I never got into the wedding side of things because I loved weddings. I really loved people. I loved the idea that someone would trust me with one of the most important days in their life when there is no do-over. And I got to play a key part in bringing that day to life. So early on in my career, I definitely, and I know we'll talk about this as we get into this, taking on maybe more than we can chew and hustle and burnout. But early on in my career, I adopted the mentality of under promise and over deliver was one of my core business mottos. So I wanted to promise something, but then give more. And I created that relationship with so many wonderful clients. Truly, there are certain clients that I still keep in touch with 14 years later. I know that they have babies. I know about their life. I keep in touch with their moms. They'll send me messages. And I think it was that. I think it was the ability to connect with people in really raw, vulnerable, amazing, hard. It's like that mix treasure chest of emotions when you're working with someone on their wedding. And I'm sure that your listeners see that too, right? There's
Oh,
joy,
100%.
stress, there's chaos, there's the unexpected, and it can really
Body image.
bond
It's
you.
just yes, it's such an
Oh,
intimate
yeah.
experience. And I think like when as sewists, we kind of think about, okay, what do I want to do with my sewing skills? Like there's so many different avenues that you can move into. And for me, it was the first time I worked with brides, it was like, oh, I get to see them more than once because they had like
Mm.
3 or 4 fittings. And like then I got to know their mom, or I got to know like why they have this theme for their wedding, and of course, putting them into a dress and like pinning things to their body and taking measurements, it's such a personal experience. And so
Oh, yeah.
hearing you say that, I was like, oh man, I know the listeners are like totally nodding in agreement because it is that personal connection that separates bridal sewing from, general tailoring or custom quilts or whatever. I mean, that all has some personality in there too, but it's just a completely different experience when you brought up that vulnerability piece, especially.
Yes. Yes. I've said, weddings bring out both the best and the worst in people. And so sometimes you're experiencing humans in a way that you quickly have to learn to adapt. And I used to joke that 40% of my job as a wedding planner was an unlicensed therapist in handling all sorts of family dynamics and
Yes.
meltdowns and all the things. So we all
Oh,
become
how do I
skilled in that.
fire a bridesmaid? I hear that
Yes.
it's like
Yeah.
not uncommon. Like, oh, okay, well, now I actually do have a playbook because I've been asked that
So
so
true.
many times.
So true.
And I think one of the best lessons I learned was whatever they walk in the door with, when you mentioned like everything, the good and the bad that comes with working with married couples, like you have to the sooner that you can recognize that it's not about me, like these
Mhm.
emotions aren't a reflection of me, the better I can show up and serve because I'm not consumed with like my own feelings being hurt. It's like, oh, you already showed up a little broken, so now we get to
Yes.
help put you back together. So when
Yeah,
did you feel
that's
like there
so
was a
true.
need for the planner's vault? Like how
Mhm.
far into owning your business were you like, oh, there's another need out here?
So I love answering this question because as I'm talking through where I saw the need, I hope that someone that is listening to this is thinking about an idea that is in their head or what their next step is, and they can see it through their lens and take action on it. But for me, what it looked like was I was about 6 to 7 years into building my planning business, and it wasn't perfect. I hadn't figured everything out, but I had grown it. I had raised my pricing. I had found the clients that I wanted to work with. And I started to have the next generation of planners and honestly other wedding pros in my market reaching out to me and saying, hey, can I pick your brain? Hey, I have this question. Hey, can we get coffee? And as I was doing a lot of those for free, I found that there were many of the same themes of things that people are struggling with. So, whether it was their pricing or client management or how to market themselves or how to reach the right vendors, I created a way to work with those wedding pros one to one. And again, same thing. So now I'm doing one to one coaching sessions, and it's almost like the same 6 to 8 buckets that entrepreneurs struggle with across
Yeah.
the board.
Yep.
And so I was on a workation. This was October 2019. I was on what I call a workation, which is just like a getaway where you get time to think big picture about your business. I was there with my husband, and what I thought would be a course that I wanted to create became an ongoing recurring membership with education and support that I focus specifically on wedding planners. So I launched that back like 3 weeks before the pandemic in 2020. And it's
Wow.
about 4.5 years in now.
Wow. And I bet that was really, like, in retrospect, such a great time because we didn't know how many people were going to be like at their laptops.
Yeah,
Like, how can I work for myself now? Like 2020, I hear that over and over again, how that was such like a reinvention year for so many people. Like, this is the
it
time that I can
was.
take the chance on my dream biz so that you already
Yes.
had that in place for all those people just ready to find you. That's amazing.
Yeah. 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 So that's when the Planners Vault started. And where I take that back to is when I launched it, I remember the night before there was this moment of like, but who am I to start this thing? Like, who am
Mhm.
I as I am still navigating challenges and difficult clients and questioning certain things that I should be doing with my business? But it's that reminder that any moment I want to share is that no one has it all figured out. I don't, you don't, your listeners don't. And we're all like doing what we can to move forward and create things that we're excited about. But there is no made it stage that is the benchmark of when you should take action on that big idea or that thing that you want to
Yes.
bring to life.
Yeah. I'm so happy of how you worded that because sometimes that can totally mess with us, right? Where we do kind of reach this subconscious benchmark, but we don't give ourselves the recognition. So it's like, well, actually, I should be actually making more. Like, if I could do that last
Mhm.
month, then I should be able to like make
Right.
even more money, or I should be able to take on more clients. And so, from the experience of like who you've been working with the past 4 years, why do you think it's especially difficult for wedding pros? I mean, I'm sure it's
Mm.
difficult in every profession, right? Any entrepreneur has a struggle with like saying no, but I, especially with wedding pros, why do you think it can be such a struggle to take on more than we're capable of handling or like
Mm.
put that pressure on ourselves?
Think it's multifaceted. I think there's the internal stuff that we have to be realistic about what we're carrying. And then I think there's the external environment. And the external environment that we live in today is something that I don't think that we were honestly wired to be able to process. The fact that, number one, we're in an industry that feels very 24/7. So it's something where
Mhm.
when people are off on the weekends, we are handling last minute crises with dresses and we're trying to fix things that come out of the blue. And we are, often taking appointments when our clients are off of work. And I think we are going against the grain of what a typical schedule might look like. And then if I'm being really honest, I think so many people that get into the hospitality and the event industry are service oriented. They are heart centered, which
Mhm.
also means that they struggle with some people pleasing and boundaries to begin with. So there's all of that going on.
Everybody's
And
feeling seen
then,
listening to this.
oh
Yeah.
my gosh, yes, yes, they're like, Megan is in my house right now. And I think then the other thing that, you and I talked about right before we hit record is we're living in a world right now where we see highlight reels all the time and it's on 20 different platforms. So
Mhm.
whether it is Instagram or TikTok or LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever else is out there, you're seeing the big wins and the awards and the new creations of your peers and others in the industry, which puts internal and external pressure on you to feel like, well, what am I supposed to be doing? I feel like I'm falling behind the curve. And it's really setting so many of us up, and myself included. I've been through these seasons in my business as well, but it's setting us up for never feeling like we are enough, feeling like we always have to be on, feeling that we always have to have like some big thing that we're
Mhm.
working on that is meant to come next. And it's just a really toxic environment to sit and stew in as a
Right.
business owner.
Right. Oh, yeah, and I think too, we don't know what like the people who are constantly posting the new things and the new ideas or starting something new, or we don't know what it feels like for them to go home at the end of the day, or like what their struggles are when it's like they're going to bed at night, or like there's just so many things that are unseen. And I think we've just conditioned ourselves to believe whatever stories in our head about,
Mhm.
or whether it's competitors or even just like fun influencers that we follow, like
Yeah.
we have this running story about their life and how happy they are, or comparing ourselves to them, and then nothing
Mhm.
that we do is ever going to match up to that imaginary story that we have going on. So it is kind of that rough combo of that, combined with wanting to like serve our clients so well and almost feeling guilty about like, well, if I say no, then
Mhm.
they're going to be so disappointed, or like I'm really not going to be like providing my best service. So for me, I feel like being able to really clearly identify what does good service mean before you're in the moment. So you're not like reacting to a scary situation with a client who's having some kind of unforeseen emergency. What is truly your responsibility in that moment based on the expectations you've already set for yourself instead of like responding in the moment emotionally and, running yourself into the ground on a Saturday or whatever that may be.
Right. And I think one of the things that I see very often with wedding pros that I do coaching with is they don't realize that they've outgrown a certain hustle stage of their
Mhm.
business. And I think we can all think back, whether, you're 1 year in or 10 years in or somewhere in between or beyond. I think we forget that we all started and there was a hustle, right? Like
Yeah.
there's the
Oh,
I
yeah.
have to I have to book clients to be able to pay my bills, or I have to
Mhm.
book clients to keep this business afloat. So you say yes to the late meeting, you respond to that text, you do the emergency thing that you have to do that you didn't charge them for.
Mhm.
And that becomes habit, right? Like that becomes how you learn to function. And we get so busy that we don't realize how unhealthy that is because we don't take time to pause and be like, wait, why am I exhausted? Why am I feeling burned out? Why do I feel depleted? And you're not resetting expectations for that next level of
Mhm.
business growth. And I know I have been there before in seasons of both of my businesses where you hustle and then you forget that it's time to create some long-term safety and growth that doesn't involve saying yes and shape shifting to every client expectation and need.
Yes. Oh, that was so good. One of the fears that I feel comes up when people are thinking about saying no is, okay, if I say no, I'm not going to make as much money, or I'm going to kind of be forgotten if I'm not constantly promoting myself and pushing myself and saying yes to all the things. And again, that goes back to the weird stories that we have in our head. So, what would you say to dispel those lies to like force us to keep going?
Yeah, I would say that that belief that if I say no or if I don't keep going 100 miles per hour is rooted in what I've come to understand through my own deep work to undo the hustle mentality is a survival brain. So there's the safety brain and there's the survival brain. The survival brain is it's either this or it's that. And it is very centered around the idea that, like, if I don't keep doing this, then epic failure is on the other side. And I would tell you that from my own lived experience in really touching burnout in three different, very different ways in my career over a 14-year period of time, that staying in that mentality of like, I got to keep going. If I don't say yes, is going to really lead you down the path of constant survival thinking, which trickles into not just your professional life, but your personal life and your mental health and your day-to-day well-being and how you view the world. So I am living proof that someone that was going 100 miles per hour, just burning the candle at both ends, really hit a wall
Mm.
from doing that to where there was no continuing forward at that pace. And the forced slowdown that came for me was honestly the best gift that I ever could have had. I was able to pause and I was able to really look at how I was showing up with my family, what I was creating in my business, what was depleting me, what I actually enjoyed doing versus what I had just been doing because I thought I was supposed to do it or because someone told me that I should do it. So
Mhm.
the slowdown and the pause in whatever form you're able to do that in your life right now. And I give that room for grace because you might be a single mom or you might be working this like job, but also doing something else, or you might be in that I'm just getting started and I really want to figure this out and I have to move pretty quickly. But in whatever space and capacity that you have to be able to find time to sit down and say, what's working right now? What's exhausting me? Where do I think I might be saying yes to things that aren't actually serving me for where I want to take this business and my life? That's where the power comes in and makes me think of the analogy on your phone. I don't know if everyone's phone does this, but I have an iPhone and it does this. Do you have a phone where when it gets to a certain battery level, certain things start like shutting down? So my iPhone will say 20% low battery mode. So it's going to stop doing like these different functions that are happening
The
behind the
screen is always
scenes.
dim. I hate that.
Yeah,
Wait,
screen is always dim. Yeah. And I think so many of us are functioning on 20% battery mode all the time. We're getting the 5 hours of sleep or whatever it is. And then we're back to checking our emails and doing our appointments and taking care of these things and doing all those things. And there is no going above 20%, which means you don't get the creativity. You don't get the big ideas. You don't get the like, oh, this could be really fun for me to do this. Not, I have to do this to survive this next season of
Right.
my business.
Right. You do need that safety net to feel playful and creative again. And because I know when it comes to like the end of October, November, I'm like, ooh, I'm gonna start quilting again. Ooh, I'm gonna start sewing for me. And it's like I don't have those
Yeah.
thoughts like in April. You know what I'm saying? And I
Yeah.
know there is, I think for each of us, there's probably like this crux of the year that it's like, okay, this is kind of go time. But it's not my full year. It's like 2 months that it's like, whew, okay. But then
Hmm.
the rest should be even out. And I'd like to get rid of those 2 months even, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And, it makes me think because I think this is part of the bigger picture conversation that we're talking about, but it's the discernment and having the capacity to have that discernment of what you should be spending your time on, what you should be saying yes to, what you should be saying no to. And because I identify as a recovering people pleaser that is, constantly working on my own boundaries, I actually keep like this little post-it note right here on my computer that are 3 questions that I ask myself before I say yes to so many different opportunities. It's like a filter of,
Mhm.
does it pass the test of these questions and should I be doing it? Or is this a shiny object thing that I saw on someone's Instagram that I think I should also be doing?
Yeah. And I'm honored that our podcast passed the test. Like you saw Haley's email and then you went through the
Absolutely.
questions.
Yeah, it
You,
really did.
wow. I feel so honored. Okay, I'd actually like to get to the nitty gritty if that's okay, because I feel like
Okay.
some listeners are literally in denial. Like,
Mhm.
oh, I'm just booked. Like, I can't help it. And they don't even realize what the burnout is. So, can we kind of talk about the habits, like the little habits that you see in wedding pros that you work with every day, that it may seem normal to them because it's just part of their routine at this point, but it's like not sustainable. So,
Yeah.
you talked about boundaries or like,
I mean, the
what are
things
the
that
steps
I
to
see.
that?
It's not knowing when to shut down from your business. So being constantly available at all times. Some of you may relate to this through the form of like texting with your clients at all hours. That is something that was a boundary for me in my planning business that, to be truly honest and transparent, which is what I hope to do with every conversation I have around boundaries, I passed my own boundary so many times. I
Mhm.
said, I don't do texting. I don't do texting. But then a client would text me and I would respond. So the texting with clients, the not having any time set aside for downtime with loved ones, they just like always on, very reactive, not getting enough sleep, having your phone next to your bed and it's your email and scrolling or whatever you're doing is the first thing that you do in the morning and the last thing that you do at night, feeling like you are on that 20% battery mode, but then the way that you keep going is lots of caffeine or whatever your
Mhm.
crutch is that keeps you moving and moving. And honestly, I would say if you find yourself in a place where every time you get an email or a text from a client, you're like, oh, this is so annoying, you probably have crossed over to the side of you need to take care of yourself a little bit more because
Some
if
people
you're
like
not
literally
taking care
don't
of
even know
yourself,
that there's life beyond that feeling. Like, oh,
I
people
know.
almost enjoy opening their inbox. What?
I mean, no, but I think like one thing I had to do is I had to take, and I remember hearing people do this and thinking like, I could never. How do people do this? How are they running a serious business? But I had to take my general email off of my phone. I took it off like 6 months ago and it's not back on again. And that means that on the weekends, I really, now again, put this through the filter of your business. I
Mhm.
no longer do weddings. I did them for 12 years and I was working all the weekends and it was a very busy time. But now like I look at it and I think, is this something that I need to be connected multiple times a day, 7 days a week? And
Mhm.
the answer is no. And
Right.
so finding those boundaries in what feels good to you and what is sustainable for where your business is right now.
Mhm. That may even be like for me, there's just a few days a week that I'm checking my business email, so I'm not even checking it every day, Monday through Friday, like anticipating to respond. And like on my
Yeah.
website, it's like expect 48 hours for a response or whatever,
Hmm.
because it also sets that precedent of like if you're in the middle of an emergency where you feel like you have to book, which that's not the case with
Hmm.
there's always a pre-booking process and all things.
Right.
But like that may even just be the first step. And then that has helped me where it's like, okay, this is my like inbox checking time and I'm in the mode to like respond to the emails. It's not
Yes.
necessarily like a delight, but it's certainly not like, oh my gosh, will you leave me alone? Because I remember that feeling. And it's like nobody was doing anything wrong. I was just triggered by myself,
Right. Yes.
essentially.
Yes. Yeah.
So
And,
these are the little things to focus in on that aren't normal.
right. And if I were to say the one thing that I see most business owners missing when it comes to setting and upholding boundaries, that is, communicating those at the beginning of the client relationship, both verbally and in writing. Because the reality is, if we put ourselves in our client's shoes, they are booking anywhere between, we'll call it 10 to 20 vendors
Mhm.
for their event. And everyone has different guidelines on how they're supposed to get in touch with them and what their office hours are and all the things. So for you to expect that this particular client is going to remember that you don't respond on these days and that you only do meetings on these days is honestly just unrealistic and unfair.
Mhm.
But it's on us as business owners to kindly and clearly communicate at the beginning of a new client relationship. Hey, so excited to work with you. Here's what the general process is going to look like. If you have an emergency, this is the best way to get in touch with me. When it's time for you to schedule your fittings, this is the way that we would like for you to do it. And all of this information is linked here for you so that you can go back and reference it as you need it. I think as much as we can do to create ease for our clients and communicating those expectations is also creating ease for us.
Oh, 100%. Yes. And everything you just said, I just love it because when I hear gals in our membership or when I'm working with women and they're struggling with the communication piece and they're so frustrated because they're coming from a place of already feeling tired and exhausted and annoyed, so they kind of can't see the what's the phrase, the
Mhm.
forest through the trees, like,
Yeah,
well, they didn't realize that this was the expectation because you actually never told them. You know what I mean? And
right,
the
right.
like the biggest compliment from brides is when they're like, "Oh my gosh, the like working with you is so easy because the communication was great." And during
Hmm.
fittings, which like you mentioned are kind of like, therapy sessions, I'm
Hmm.
hearing about these horror stories of other vendors or like, yeah, our florist, like we haven't heard from her in like 4 weeks and I'm just so stressed and I've been like texting her. Da, da, da. It's like they're texting because they don't know what's happening or whatever. So hearing those secondhand stories, I'm like, wow, this is what it's like to live in your head. But it takes the focus off of me because I'm like, I understand why you're feeling so angsty because you've kind of been
Yes.
ghosted. I'm sure you're still on their books, but they're overwhelmed. They can't handle the communication. So you're the one that's kind of suffering. So our brides struggle with that too with seamstresses. And so having the communication and the expectations on the front end is just
Hmm.
awesome. And put it everywhere because excited brides don't always
Everywhere. They don't read.
know.
Yeah, they don't read.
Your website, your investment guide, have it be throughout
You
your
could put
social
it in your
media.
signature,
Yeah.
like how to
Mhm.
commute, like client information. You can
Yep.
you can put it in so many different places. You can have it
Yes.
as a hidden page on your website. Yes,
Uh-huh.
so many things.
And I don't have my phone number anywhere. Like there's no phone
Hmm.
access. I tried the whole like business Google number thing and I'm like, I literally just don't like talking to people on the phone and I don't want to text you. Email works
Yeah.
fine. and it just cleaned up everything. So, and I also feel like, okay, this might just be a personal opinion. I feel like when people text you, they think you're their friend.
Uh-huh.
And it just changes the dynamic totally. And I'm like, I love you, but I'm not your friend. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I don't even want to get
Yeah.
familiarity. And I know that's like a personal thing for me. Some people love
No, I
just,
agree with that.
it's
Yeah.
easy to, oh, I send my invoices via text. I'm like, what? Like, I
Mm-mm.
don't know. I don't
Mm-mm.
know. It just is too familiar for me.
Right. It's like finding what works for your business. And I feel the
Mhm.
same way. I think texting is really hard to have boundaries around. But if you are going to do texting, make sure that you set it up clearly from the beginning. Like, I check my texts and respond between this time and this time. And again, I would advise you not to text with your clients. But if you do, just make sure that the boundaries are clear and then don't pull a past Megan and have a boundary in place, but then
Just
bypass your own
kidding.
boundary because it does not work out well for you.
Exactly. Okay, so how we already kind of been talking through this, but are there any other practical steps beyond the email times or the texting times
Yeah.
that we can take about maybe even prioritizing rest or playfulness
Hmm.
or like time with family?
Yes.
Like what are some steps we can take this week?
A couple things. Yes. So, what I would recommend for someone listening to this right now, as long as you're in a spot where you're safe and you're not driving, is if you keep your calendar either digitally or paper calendar, open up your calendar, flip a few weeks to when things are going to slow down, hopefully, and start blocking out some time. So I like to do this as a gift to future Megan, where I will go months in advance or weeks in advance, and I'll be like, I'm going to block out this afternoon, like no appointments on this day. No one can get some time on my calendar. And then when I get to it, it is that creative space, whether it's something that I want to do big picture for my business, or if I just want some downtime and I want to go have lunch with my girls at their school, whatever it might be. So as we need this reminder, you don't have a boss. You are your boss. So you have to find ways to take care of yourself and carve out time. And it doesn't have to be that it's for a vacation or it's for a doctor's appointment. Like, you can just take some time because
Mhm.
you need it. And then, Nadine, I know you and I were talking about this, but I'm a big believer in also like putting yourself in the room to be inspired by others. So if you're in Nadine's group or you're part of her community, the events and the retreats that she does are such a great way to refuel your excitement for your business and unlock some solutions that perhaps have been eluding you in what you want to do next. And then I think something that I learned through my season of burnout was to, this is a little woo, but it's like reconnecting back with what I like to do for fun when I didn't have as many cares in the world as I do now. And I've always been the more artistic type. So I used to paint furniture in high school, and in college, I worked at a paint your own pottery studio and ran the summer camps there. So just like that creative outlet, reconnecting with what that might have been for you when you were younger. And for me, that's been like just painting just for fun, which as an entrepreneur and someone that is like, but there has to be a purpose and we sell it, right? Like, we do something to make money, or like there's a reason, but just to do it, just to
You have
do
to
it.
sell it. That's so
I know.
true.
I
What's
know.
it
Yeah.
can't make
I'm
money off.
like, how am I supposed to turn this into a business? Am I supposed to start leading classes on this? I don't know. No, but finding ways to reconnect with what brings you joy outside of your business. And yours may not, it's not going to be the same as mine, but think back, maybe it's baking, maybe it's like joining a pickleball club thing, maybe it's learning how to do something that you've wanted to know for so long, make pottery. I don't know, but just finding the outlet for that as well is another way to take care of yourself, prioritize rest, and yeah, good
Yeah,
stuff.
we have our Fall Fest. And so the theme of that is creative restoration. So we'll touch on some business things that we can think about in our slow months, but I really want to focus on just reigniting that creativity because ultimately that's what
Mhm.
brought bridal seamstresses into this realm was the sewing and the creative.
Yeah.
So things that you were saying, I was like, oh my gosh, we're doing that. Oh my gosh. Ooh. So we're coming
Ooh,
to Fall
so
Fest.
fun.
And if this comes out before Fall Fest, I'm so excited. I cannot wait. So
Yes.
So if you want to hear more about Megan's story, you have some great podcast episodes out about your burnout and how you recovered, but can
Yeah.
you tell us how the new habits that you put in place, prioritizing rest, how has that helped your personal
Mm.
life? Which some of us listening
Oh,
are like, there's a personal life out there. So how did that help the
yes.
personal side of your life?
The beginning, January of this year, as we're recording this 2024, was the beginning of pulling a thread on burnout in my professional life, which also led to pulling a thread on burnout in my personal life, because as you can imagine, they're just so intertwined. I've been married for 14 and a half years, and I have 3 children. My husband is an entrepreneur. I'm an entrepreneur. And what the pushing pause and reevaluating all of my yeses, and honestly, like releasing some things that I thought I was supposed to do both as a mom and as a wife and as a business owner, all of that has led to a reinvigorating of what comes next for me. So I think I realized how much I had been living my life. As much as I wanted to say, like, I've done the work, which I have over many years, it was this year in particular that was the like hammer on, you have to stop doing things for external applause or because you think that someone is watching and that they are thinking that you should or should not be doing something. So
Mm,
it's finding that safety in the realization, and this is where, I don't want to go too deep here, but the realization is that, like, I'm 41 and I'm not guaranteed any set time here. And I've often thought about how if I were to die tomorrow, if my legacy is I was a great wedding planner, or I was a great speaker, or they really liked my podcast, honestly, that's a miss for me. Like, my legacy is meant to be that, those can be exterior things, but my legacy is really meant to be like who I'm spending time with and how I'm pouring into those people that are in my inner circle. So
mhm.
that, to me, to answer your question in super long form, is what the pause and the reevaluation of priorities brought this year.
That was beautiful, though. It was totally worth the long route to get there.
That's that
Um,
ADHD brain for sure. That's like do 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 do, and we're here.
Oh, it made me want to cry because it's like we just
Mm,
get so caught up and so caught up in the day to day and like appointment to appointment, like dress to dress, that big picture, like giving yourself the time to like step back and like what is it truly all for? And doing that before, you're 20 years down the road and like
yeah,
what did I just spend my life doing? Comparing myself to people on Instagram, you know,
right,
having
right.
that really cool post, which,
I know.
depending on the demographic of who's listening, that's a real thing. So
Yeah,
that was so
yeah.
helpful. This is Secrets of a Bridal Seamstress. So your final question, and I know you've already given us so many secrets, but what is your best kept secret as a wedding pro? I already feel like I
Mm,
love some of the things you've already said, and I feel like that's gonna be my best kept secret walking out of this, but you can come up with something new.
okay. Well, I feel like we talked a fair amount, because I would have said make sure that you're creating time for the pause in your business.
Mhm.
So whether it's, one of the retreats that Nadine hosts, or finding your own time to have the pause to think long term and big picture about what you want. But I think we've covered that. So what I think I want to say, as someone that purchased a business, sold a business, and will hopefully one day sell another business, my tip to you would be manage your business as though you might one day sell it. And maybe you're like, no, 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 I don't know. It's so small. It's just me. It's my name. I'm not going to do that. I would say what I want you to hear from that is there are so many people that want to get into what you are doing or want to learn from you, that I would learn to function and have your business run in a way that if someone came along one day and was like, I want in and you want out, you listening to this, you have the ability to do that. I think as solopreneurs, oftentimes it's quite messy behind the scenes, right? Like, there's a lot of things that are not clear and we don't have a full understanding of the cost of running our business. But making sure that your business can pass the bus test, which I think is a Mike Michalowicz thing. But the bus test means if you got hit by a bus tomorrow, that someone, whether it's a loved one or an assistant or a fellow colleague in the industry, could step in and keep your business going, that's the way you want to run it, because you never know what opportunities might come from setting your business up to be transferable to someone else one day.
That was so unexpected.
Yeah.
That's a really cool secret.
Secrets.
Yeah, that was a great one. All right. Well, tell us where listeners can find you. And if you have any events that are open to bridal seamstresses, even beyond
Of
wedding
course.
or beyond wedding planners, I should say.
Yes, yes, yes. Let's see. So, depending on when this comes out, well, we'll start with where to find me. The best place to find me, if you are in the wedding industry in any capacity, would be through my podcast, which is called Weddings for Real. You can find us at weddingsforreal.com. You can find us on Instagram at weddingsforreal. I speak at Wedding MBA, which is coming out mid-November. So this might be after the fact. And then, stay tuned, because I do some free workshops for all business owners throughout the year, virtual workshops and whatnot, that we'd love to have you join us.
So we'll link all that in the show notes, and then I'll be sharing your stuff on Instagram too. So if you follow me on the IG,
Amazing.
you'll be seeing what Megan has going on. So thank you so much for your time and your transparency and breaking it down and keeping it real and telling us to take a nap and then go do something playful.
That's right. And keep your phone not next to your side of the bed. That's it.
Exactly. All right. Thanks everyone
y'all.
for tuning in. Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you like what you heard, please subscribe and share this podcast with a friend. And if you're feeling really generous, leave a review. Thanks, everyone.